Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K18's My League mode. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our NBA 2K18 My League expansion series. Before we jump into the games, however, we will take care of the trade that we already talked about in the last episode. We are looking for a different player at the point guard position, ideally someone who is a good defender and a good playmaker, and the overwhelming majority of you guys was in favor of acquiring Dante Exum from the Utah Jazz. Exum's upside is quickly explained. He is a 6'6" point guard, an excellent on-ball defender and a very good playmaker. He is also very quick on his feet, not as quick as Tyler Ulis was, but still we're not going to lose much in that regard. One downside with Exum is his outside shot, which is really not that great, and also the fact that he is on an expiring contract. In a trade, however, we would acquire his bird rights because he has spent all 6 years of his career with the Jazz, so re-signing him should not be that big of a problem. And so here we now have the deal that we're going with. We are going to ship Tyler Ulis and a second round pick off to Utah in exchange for Exum, who comes with no picks attached. For some reason the CPU would not agree to a straight up trade, even though Ulis is, at least rating wise, the better player and on a 4-year contract, but since second round draft picks in this game are rarely worth anything, I have absolutely no problem including one. And so we now say goodbye to the player that we actually selected first overall in the expansion draft, Tyler Ulis, who I had hoped could become a cornerstone of this franchise, and make no mistake about it, he was a very reliable playmaker for the time he spent with us. Now, however, we set our sights on the future, and in that future I do not see us win a championship unless our starting point guard can consistently defend other starting caliber point guards, and sadly Tyler Ulis was never the man for that job. So as the trade goes through here, we wave goodbye to Tyler Ulis and we say hello to our new starting point guard, Dante Exum. To get us started, Exum will take over Ulis' spot in the rotation without any minute changes. Depending on how he plays, however, slight up or downgrades are of course possible. Now our first game of the episode, that will be against the Dallas Mavericks. We have not faced them yet this season, and this game could actually be a very good test of Exum's defensive abilities, as his matchup for the night will be last year's first overall pick, Grant McLeod. Now, the Legionnaires got off to a rocky start in this one. Anthony Davis was in foul trouble early on, and remember, we're also still missing both Mo Bamba and Dante Davis due to injury. Still, with our star player out, the rest of the team rose to new heights and carried the team to a victory. Rodney Hood, Andre Flanders and Bryce Johnson all provided good scoring. Our two top scorers, Richardson and Davis, also managed to get themselves into double-digit territory, and Dante Exum's debut as a Legionnaire was formidable as well. Yes, he missed a lot of shots and finished the game shooting only 2 of 9 from the field, but in his very first game as a Legionnaire, Exum actually tied his career high in assists with 12. He also added 4 rebounds and 2 steals to his final stat line, a stat line that definitely left me wanting more. A chance for that and another big test for Exum, our next game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Our season series against the Cavs is tied at 1 apiece after a tough overtime loss in the last episode. However, this game now also marks the first time we throw a big point guard at Isaiah Thomas. Now, that did not work as well as I had hoped on defense. However, on offense we absolutely abused Thomas. 95% of his playing time he was either matched up against 6'6" Exum or 6'8" Rodney Hood, and honestly in the end I would say that cost the Cavaliers the game, because more often than not our offense both started and ended against Isaiah Thomas. Kevin Love was also mostly helpless against our big men on defense, and so the Legionnaires secure themselves a 13-point victory against the reigning champions. Johnson and Davis were tied for the team high scoring performance with 18 points each. However, the stat line of the night undoubtedly belongs to Davis, who also added 19 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals and the block. Our wing players Hood, Richardson and Flanders contributed a combined 45 points as well, but another shining star for the Legionnaires in this game was once again Dante Exum, who finished the game with a 10-point, 10-assist double-double and also added 6 rebounds and 2 steals. The list of tough matchups for Exum, though, it would not end there. In our very first game against the Warriors this season, he will now face Steph Curry, as the Warriors are trying to move up to the top ranks in the Western Conference. And this game ended in a very close finish. Ultimately, the Warriors had the upper hand. It was, of course, absolutely no surprise to see them with great shooting from 3. They also played very good defense, and that was enough to secure a 6-point victory. On our side, not a whole lot of performances were worth mentioning. Standing out above the rest was once again Anthony Davis, who finished 1 rebound shy of a double-double with 29 points and 9 rebounds, followed by Rodney Hood with an efficient 18 and by Andre Flanders with a much less efficient 12. So we travel to Brooklyn for the next one. This already our second game of the season against them. The first one was a 2-point loss, and in this one we came up short again. Even though Brooklyn shot abysmal from the free throw line and barely managed to make over 50% of their attempts, they still kept their turnovers low and their 3-point percentage high, and that was enough to beat the Legionnaires by 11, 118 to 107. Andre Flanders with a strong performance is our first scoring option off the bench. He finished with 25 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists, while Davis had 23 points, 9 rebounds and 3 blocks, and Richardson added 19 points and Mitch Dennis added 16. So 2 losses in a row now, and the Legionnaires once again drop down to the 2nd seed in the East. However, we have the Pelicans coming up next, and they are still the worst team in the league. They have only won 2 of their last 13 games, and they are currently on a 6-game losing streak, and also this is now the first time that Anthony Davis matches up against his former team. And as a huge Pelicans fan myself, it pains me to say this, but New Orleans did not stand a chance tonight. Both our first and our second unit absolutely dismantled them. The end result here does not even resemble how lopsided this game was. Even players like Chris Dunn and Festus Ezeli scored in double digits, as the Legionnaires bounced back off of a small 2-game losing streak and beat New Orleans by 18 points. Once again, our top scorer in this one came off the bench, and it was Andre Flanders, who had 28 points. However, arguably an even more impressive stat line came from Anthony Davis, who came 1 point and 1 rebound shy of a 2020 game against his former team, while Chris Dunn, Josh Richardson and Festus Ezeli are the remaining double-digit scorers in this one. An honorable mention goes to AJ Hammonds, who set a new career high with 14 rebounds. So 2 days of rest and we have the Charlotte Hornets visiting up next, and despite the Hornets being in the East, this is actually our very first matchup against them this season. And with a 16-23 record, the Hornets are actually second to last in the East right now. Kemba Walker simply does not have a lot of help on this team. Malik Monk is currently injured as well, and those weaknesses showed in this game. The Legionnaires have no trouble cruising on to another victory. We shot the magical 50-40-90 splits as a team. The Legionnaires also with a plus 14 advantage on the boards, as Charlotte quickly fell behind and never came back, on their way to a 31-point defeat. The Legionnaires with a very even scoring distribution in this one. 6 players scored in double digits, led by Anthony Davis with 23 points and 12 rebounds, followed by Andre Flanders with 21, Josh Richardson with 18, Exum and Dennis with 12 points each, and Rodney Hood with 10. Final game of the week now, and we travel to Atlanta for this one. A big matchup, 2nd seed in the East versus 3rd seed in the East. It is somewhat surprising to see Atlanta this far up in the rankings, but the team around DeAndre Ayton seems to be on a hot streak this season. Ayton himself is currently averaging great numbers, 14 points, 11 rebounds, 1.5 steals and 2 blocks per game, and he is also 2nd in the league in field goal percentage. The Hawks also have a pretty decent bench, as Jared Sullinger and Dennis Schroeder are both in the race for 6th man of the year. Despite those tools at halftime, this game looked pretty much decided already, and it was not in favor of Atlanta. The stats here show the Legionnaires pretty much outplayed the Hawks in every aspect of the game. Davis only 1 point shy of a double-double at halftime, and with 6 assists already actually on pace for a triple-double. And so what already looked like a sure thing at halftime turned into one of the most dominant blowouts in Legionnaire history. The 3rd seed Hawks suffer a crushing 45-point defeat here at home. There was definitely a big gap in quality between these two teams tonight, as the Legionnaires make a huge statement in regular season victory number 30. Looking at the stats, we have our 2 shooting guards at the top of the list, Flanders with 27 points and Richardson with 21, but the stat line of the night and maybe even of the season so far, that belongs to Anthony Davis. With 19 points, 26 rebounds and 10 assists, Davis records a triple-double, and not only that, it is the first triple-double ever in Louisville Legionnaires history. Yes, it took us 3.5 seasons to achieve this, and I think it is very fitting that Davis is the one to finally do it. AJ Hammonds also once again gets himself an honorable mention tonight. He finished the game with 6 points, 9 rebounds and 6 blocks in only 17 minutes, and definitely proves that it was a very good idea that we picked him up. So a new week has begun. The Legionnaires are still trailing behind the Bulls in the East, but we have good news. Mo Bamba is fully healthy again and will therefore return to the starting lineup for the Legionnaires. I have slightly lowered his minutes. I think we'll have to keep a close eye on that. We definitely need him to be healthy once the playoffs begin. And in the battle for the backup spot, AJ Hammonds has actually taken over the role of Festus Ezeli. I really liked Hammonds' production over the last few games, and even though his minutes have been slightly reduced now with Bamba back in the lineup, I still think he will be able to contribute nicely off the bench. At the point guard spot I also made some slight adjustments. Dante Exum received a slight minutes increase. I think he has definitely earned that. Chris Dunn's minutes on the other hand were lowered a bit, not because he's playing poorly, but simply because the minutes for Exum have to come from someone. And with that lineup, we now head into our third regular season matchup against the Indiana Pacers. The first two games were both blowout wins for us. Admittedly though, the Pacers were missing key players in both of those. For this game, their starting unit was fully healthy again. However, that didn't change anything about the outcome tonight. Mo Bamba returns in full force, Richardson and Flanders once again put up tremendous scoring performances, and the Legionnaires take another victory as they defeat the Pacers by 18 points, 107-89. Like I said, our two shooting guards were once again the leading scorers in this one. Richardson had 24 points and Flanders 21, and both Davis and Bamba put up impressive double-doubles, 17 points, 13 rebounds and 3 blocks for Davis, and 16 points, 12 rebounds and 4 blocks for Bamba. And with that, the Legionnaires' win streak grows to 4 now, as we enter our very first regular season matchup against the Sacramento Kings. With a 23-19 record, the Kings are currently ranking 5th in the West. They have assembled a very good and very young team, and surprisingly also a team that was good enough to beat the Legionnaires by 21 points at home. The Kings played a very disciplined game, they kept their turnovers low and their field goal percentage high, and that was enough to hand the Legionnaires another loss, as the Kings comfortably beat us 116-95. It was a blowout loss and no one really stood out for us. 20 points and 7 rebounds from AD, that was probably the best we had on our side tonight. Richardson added 17 points but didn't do much else and also committed 6 turnovers, while Mitch Dennis may have actually been one of the more impressive players tonight, as he finished with a total of 16 points in only 16 minutes. Coming off of a loss at home, we get no rest and have to travel to New York for the next one, where the Knicks host us for the second matchup of the season. In the first game, Joe Francis absolutely torched us and led the Knicks to a victory. However, the Knicks are in a bit of a slump these last few games. They have only won 3 of their last 10 games, and unfortunately for them, that trend continued tonight. The Legionnaires once again put up a dominant scoring performance. We had 7 double-digit scorers and a plus 19 rebounding advantage, and that led the Legionnaires to a big 35-point victory. Our 7 double-digit scorers are led by Andre Flanders off the bench, who finished the game with 28 points ahead of Richardson with 19, Davis with 16, Exum and Hood with 15 each, Johnson with 12, and Bamba with 10. And that already brings us to the 4th and final game of the week, as we once again face off against the Pacers in a chance to sweep the season series. And what can I say, we simply seem to match up perfectly against them. For the 4th time this season, the Pacers once again suffer a blowout loss against the Legionnaires. This time they lose at home by 22 points, 103-81. Our player of the game, that was clearly Anthony Davis. He played a bit more than he needed tonight with 37 minutes, but those were good enough for 28 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals and 2 blocks. Richardson also logged heavy minutes on his way to 16 points, 5 rebounds and 4 assists, while Flanders, Exum and Dennis scored 14, 12 and 12 respectively. Now, we still haven't caught up with the Bulls yet, but that could change in our next game against the Orlando Magic. We already played them once and won that game. The Magic are also dead last in the Eastern Conference with a 15-34 record, therefore the result of this game was no surprise at all. The Legionnaires cruise on to another double-digit victory and make quick work of the Magic, who lose the game by 22 points. Andre Flanders was clearly our best player in this game. He finished the game with a scorching hot 35 points, including 5 of 7 from deep, while Davis double-doubled with 19 points and 11 rebounds. Richardson and Hood provided some good scoring off the wings, and Mo Bamba showed some versatility in only 25 minutes, putting up 11 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal and 2 blocks. And with that, the Legionnaires have successfully reclaimed the first seed in the Eastern Conference, and we only have one more thing to talk about before we wrap the episode up. As you can see here, Dante Exum is ready to agree to a contract extension. By the way, please ignore both Hood and Richardson here, they both still have an additional year left on their contracts. Exum meanwhile would be willing to re-sign with the Legionnaires, and for a fairly reasonable price, I think. My question at this point is, do we want to do that or do we want to wait until free agency? If everything remains the way it is right now, then we will enter the next free agency period with a cap space of roughly $21 million. However, we will definitely exercise our team options on Bamba, Flanders and Dennis, which will already bring that amount down to roughly $6 million. Therefore, signing Exum to an extension now would very likely bring us over the cap, or at least very close to it, but we could lock him down without having any competition, and it would also be at a fairly cheap price, I think. On the other hand, we could also wait until free agency arrives and try to bring him back then. With the little cap space we have, we could in theory also sign someone else first, because we acquired Exum's bird rights in the trade, and could therefore go over the salary cap to bring him back. Now, the downside to this is that we would obviously have to compete against other teams, and also that Exum would very likely be a bit more expensive once he hits the open market. So at this point, I would like to hear your take on the situation. Do you think we should lock him down for cheap right now and remove the tiny amount of cap space we have next season in the process, or should we rather wait until the offseason and try to make him a competitive offer using his bird rights? One final thing to consider at this point, the maximum length of his contract using the extension would be 4 years, while in free agency we could offer him a 5-year contract. Admittedly, that doesn't make that much of a difference, but maybe it tips the scale for you. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Next time we will then complete the month of January and very likely move up until the All-Star break, after which we will then enter the final stretch of the season. And with that, we'll make the cut in today's episode. As always, if you liked the video, then I would be happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to support the channel and help us grow, then you can either subscribe if you haven't already, or you can support the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.